Ladies and gentlemen, welcome. This is an inaugural event that is of a public nature of the Hung Lung Mathematics Award. 20 years ago, Professor Xing-Tung Yao and myself started this program, and it was at his insistence that it is research-based. It is not just, like math Olympiad or whatever, which is okay, I suppose, but this is really something different, and that is we want to make sure that students in Hong Kong should think research and not just think the right answer. And so we are very happy that over the last 20 years, we have had a lot of students. We have had several hundred, 200 some schools. We have 2,600 students. We have had 460 papers, reports submitted. Just by way of introduction, every other year, Hung Lung Math Award is held right here in Hong Kong. And we invite schools, any schools in Hong Kong can join, and they come up with a research project that has to be vested by a group of professors from Hong Kong, be it from Hong Kong UST, Hong Kong University, Chinese University, Baptist University, Hong Kong Poly, and so forth. We have a group of professors who vest those reports. And if they think that they are good enough, then they can proceed. And in the summer, the students would do these math reports, and they would submit it at the end of summer. And then toward the end of the year, we have a panel of scientific committees that is comprising some of the top scientists, mathematicians from around the world. And when Xing-Tung was involved, he was the chair of our mathematics, of our scientific committee. In the last few years, Professor Richard Chen, who is from Stanford and now at UC Irvine, a Wolf Prize winner from Israel, is now the chair of the scientific committee. I'm happy to report that the quality that they have encountered is truly amazing. Like this year, the winner, which was awarded only a couple of weeks ago, the way that Professor Richard Chen, introduced that report was that it reaches a second-year postgraduate level. In other words, most mathematics majors in undergraduate studies may not understand it. At least they could not be able to do what our students, high school students in Hong Kong, was able to do. And this year, we're very pleased that the gold medal of last year was present with us, because last year it was done during COVID, and hence he could not come here. He was a first-year student, I believe, in Imperial College. His research of 2 years ago, was also up to the standard of graduate level according to the scientific committee. So we know that there's a lot of talents in Hong Kong. We just need an occasion, an opportunity for all these brilliant mathematical minds to come together to do research. And we're very happy also to report that many of those who have won awards, or many who did not win awards, have gone on to very, very interesting career. Many of them have received degrees, advanced degrees from the likes of MIT, Harvard, Yale, Stanford, and many others. And so our students are truly very, very impressive. I want to thank the partner of Hung Lung over the last 20 years. First, we worked together very closely, and still today, we still work closely with the professors from the Chinese University of Hong Kong. In the last 2 times, we have been working with Hong Kong University of Science and Technology, and we've encountered the same kind of support that is truly impressive. These professors really have a heart for the students, and they devote tremendous amount of time to engaging them. So this has been the 20th year of this award. We thought that it would only be good if we can do some public programs for Hong Kong in general. The idea, of course, is not to talk to you about mathematics, because if you were to talk to me about mathematics, I won't understand. So, Zhang Xiang, please reserve the mathematical advanced stuff to the university and not here. But we do want to talk about how mathematics can train the mind, how mathematics can be a mother of many sciences in order to produce people in the sciences, in engineering, in medicine, and indeed in many other fields. So I understand that there is one gentleman who is a gold medal recipient from the last two or three times. Are there any students here who have won or have participated in the award in the past? Are there? Please rise. Only one. A lot of them are having examination. I understand that as a result, a lot of students cannot join. But anyway, today being the first time we have this public lecture, I'm delighted to have invited my brother. Many of you know that you have heard of my brother. You may not have met him, but anyway, a lot of you are curious what my brother is like. Well, he's a lot more tall and handsome and a lot smarter than his brother. That's enough said. But anyway, I'm delighted that Gerald can be here. Gerald is a strange fella. His degrees are in aeronautical engineering to geofluid dynamics to radiomedical physics to finally radiological biology, where he received his doctorate degree from Harvard. And then, of course, we are very, very honored to have the two presidents, President Nancy Yip from Hong Kong University of Science and Technology, as well as Professor Zhang Xiang, the president of Hong Kong University, to join my brother on stage to discuss what is good research. For those of you who are unaware, the reason it is held here is because Asia Society is very kind to let us use this place. In return, we have to give them something. And so tonight, there will be an Asia Society program with the same speakers, but we're going to discuss very different subjects. I have in mind, I'm going to moderate that discussion. I have in mind, for example, to discuss the issues such as ethics and how ethics and scientific research and development will impact each other. Right? There are many other similar issues that people in society are of interest to the people in society, but are not exactly what will be discussed today. So, ladies and gentlemen, can I, with that, call upon my brother, Dr. Gerald Chan, Professor Nancy Yip, President of Hong Kong UST, and Professor Zhang Xiang, the President of Hong Kong U, to come up to the stage and start the discussion.
Well, I'm delighted to be here and to be with 我哈佛嘅師妹同埋我加州大學嘅師弟，聽唔認老都唔得啊！But we have I have no set agenda here. I'm really here just to engage in a conversation, with these two presidents, and really as a matter of public engagement to discuss or open the doors of science to people who are not everyday practicing science. There are a lot of people who are, in fact, citizen scientists or science enthusiasts, and to some extent, science is still a mystery, seemingly cloistered behind closed doors. I think what public engagement should do is to open those doors, fling them open, and remove the mystique and let others, have more of an insight into what is science, how is science prosecuted, and for scientific research, how is that conducted? What can we look forward to coming out of research? What is good research? I randomly sort of picked that topic, for this afternoon. Now, I will begin by making a few comments, and then I'll ask Nancy to make a few comments, and I'll have Zhang Xiang to make a few comments, and then we'll engage in a conversation, and then reserve plenty of time for you all to ask questions and talk about anything that is of interest to you. And I will simply begin by saying something particularly for the benefit of the students. I had heard that there were 40 students from Gaoshan Shuyuan, but I don't see them here. Huh? Oh, okay. I'm very pleased to see you. Now, the question that I would pose, for all of you is, what is science? We commonly understand science by the subject matter, oh, physics is science, chemistry is science, biology is science. But I would tell you today that it is not the subject matter that makes the field of inquiry science. Rather, it is the method of inquiry that makes, a subject science. Therefore, we have social science, we have political science. It's not that they are not science because they are not physics and chemistry. Rather, it's the approach, the mode of inquiry that conforms to the scientific method, which is something that came out of the Enlightenment, which entails observation, induction, deduction, to hypothesis generating, and then empiricism, to validate or to falsify those hypotheses. I think, if some of you who are more into science, you will immediately detect that I'm more of a follower of Karl Popper, who insists that science can only progress by falsifiable hypotheses. Those hypotheses must be falsifiable, or else, they are not, scientifically valid hypotheses. And so, in that light, you will see a lot of today what is called science really cannot be science. And likewise, vice versa. Things that may not be thought of as science, in fact can be, considered science. So with that, I say, I put that forward as a masthead, somewhat because, nowadays people talk about AI, and AI is going to, generate science. If you think of this rubric, of falsifiable hypotheses subjected to empirical validation or falsification or refutation, then AI cannot do all science. AI can be a fantastic engine, for hypothesis generation. So I will pass on to Si Mui. Huh?
Thank you, Si Heng. Joe said the topic for this panel is what is good research. So to me, good research generates knowledge in a rigorous, logical, and ethical manner. I think good research needs to have those characteristics. And the university should engage in both curiosity-driven, that is often called basic or fundamental research, as well as mission-oriented, or sometimes called applied research. I think the university should engage in both. And we need to have a balance of the two, because both types of research are important to a knowledge-based society. So curiosity-driven research can perhaps lead to unexpected breakthroughs that can inform mission-oriented research, which can result in practical solutions to certain challenges. And I believe the two are important. They're both important, and they reinforce each other. So for a research university, we should support both. We should foster an environment that is conducive for both kinds of research. And at HKUST, from the since the establishment of the university, we have cultivated this kind of environment whereby we empower our faculty and our students to engage in both kinds of research. We empower them, to not only generate knowledge, but also be change makers so that they can make a positive impact on the society. So this is just my initial remarks when Gerald asked me to talk about, what is good research. In fact, the university generates knowledge, and we all generate knowledge. Really, it's for the benefit of mankind, and it can be to improve lives. It can be to, address specific challenges that, these are the global challenges. So I think I will stop at that, and maybe we can have more discussion later.
Yep.
Well, Professor Nancy Yip said very well. There are, fundamental research, basic research, and applied research. And actually, if you look at from a little bit different angle, humans, we live in the Earth for probably, many years. There are two needs, actually, if we categorize. One is actually we need to feed ourselves. Material, in a material world, we have to live well, dress well, drive a car, fly around the world, and all of this ever actually increase demands of humans' so-called better life. But on the other hand, humans never give up our pursuit, our aspiration, which are more spiritual, whether it's a religion or not. Religion is not probably part of science, but the science actually is, as Gerald said very well, that something you can validate, you can prove, and you can repeat. Whether this year I'll observe this phenomena, the moon around Earth and so on, but next year, this time, it's the same thing. So it's a repeatable, verifiable. So those are science. And some of the rules and principles of how nature operates, and that also. But again, as Gerald said, it's not limited to nature. It's also in human society. Our economics actually is somewhat science too, where you observe certain behaviors in economics, and that happen every time, that comes to the cycle. So really, I think the humans are, at least in my simple understanding, has two sides, and that actually gives. But these two actually is not, clear cut in a way. A lot of aspirations, which in the beginning sounds like nothing, is, has any benefits to how we live. For example, 1 + 1 = 2. And there's a lot of mathematicians pursue this and ask why this is. And that's how Mr. Chen, I think he solved a problem. Mr. Chen Jingren from China solved the problem closer to that, but not exactly. Now, you may ask why the people pursue that? Well, this is how the humans are. We're different than other species. We always pursue the highest level of the intellectual excellence and the curiosity. So that's actually one. Now, you may say, well, that's not useful. I can tell you something. 60 years ago, when President Kennedy announced, they are pursuing put the man on the moon. You may ask, what is that useful, right? Well, it's again a human aspiration. For many years, can you fly out of the Earth? And that's cool. That's cool. That aspiration actually propel human to pursue. That's probably how, I don't know, whether Jared got into astronomical engineering department many years ago. But that's how actually human, we want to fly. We want to have like a bird, right? Those things may not be materialized, may not benefit in the beginning. What is that one man in the moon will benefit to us? But I can tell you, half century later, we know that. I benefit from that. We all benefit. Some of us has a dress shirt, which is called wrinkle-free, where actually after you wash it, you put it down and dry it out, you don't have to iron it. That actually material technology is from the 1960s and 70s when they developed the solar cell stuff, and as a byproduct, that material now used for wrinkle-free dressing. So garment industry benefit from that, right? So a lot of things are in Chinese, 无心插柳柳成行, right? So it means actually you pursue something with the purest idea, curiosity, but at the end, a lot of things coming out. So that why I want to mention that, because society, and especially, I don't know whether we have a government officer here. We have a Sylvia Chang, who is a former Secretary of the Health. I mean, in any government and so on, they want the KPI and all of this. For something, it's useful when you develop buildings and so on. But if you really talk about university research, I would actually really want to emphasize on, as a nation, as a a vibrant city like this, Hong Kong, we need to actually have both. We have both. But if we all pursue one side, a very applied short-term return on, but then you go to Huawei and IBM to pursue research. But in the university, we want to pursue this, actually, the basic research of purest curiosity. It's not only for short-term return and so on, but we actually, one of the missions, as Professor Nancy Ye talked about, in the university is education. Now, today's education is not simply going to lecture room. You actually involve the student into your lab research. Why is that? That's part of, as Professor Ye talked about, you teach a student how to create the knowledge. Previously, years ago, decades ago, our classroom is actually transmission of knowledge. Student as an absorber of the knowledge. They just receive from teacher, taking notes, passing exams. But today, they need to learn, like professors and research, how they create knowledge. And that's actually for fun. And that's why government actually one day will lead workforce scientists in the companies to do innovation. But where they learn how to innovate? Well, in the university, when they do research, that's the experience they need to build up. So it's no longer absorbing the knowledge, but also learn how to create knowledge, as Professor Nancy Ye just pointed out. So these are, and to give a student inspiration, that curiosity is very important. I will hate my professor to tell me, say, well, in the lab, you do this, and next year we're going to have a product, we have selling and in 3 years and so on. That's fine for some, really, but if the whole university moving to that direction, I would not want to see that. And certainly Hong Kong U want our students to be very inspirational, very creative, and challenge themselves and ask a lot of questions. And that's what university should be.
Well said, Zhang. I fully agree. I think when the university engages in curiosity-driven research, basic research, actually it really fosters an environment that is so important for students, because it really allows the students to acquire the critical skill sets, critical thinking, problem solving, and also for their intellectual growth. I think this is so important in a university setting. Having said that, I think the university can have both. I think it can, embrace curiosity-driven research, blue sky research, because when you do that kind of research, you really don't know what to expect. But sometimes it can lead to serendipitous discovery, which can have huge impact. I mean, there are so many examples, right? CRISPR-Cas technology is an excellent example where it has such impact on medicine, right? The gene editing tool, and the potential is huge. But how did it get started? It's simply because a researcher was curious to understand what is the mechanism underlying the microbial immune response. That was it. But then it was the collaboration between Emmanuel Charpentier and also Jennifer Doudna. It's that collaboration that really led to the breakthrough. And then, the rest is history, because, they were able to demonstrate the tremendous potential of that technology, which started off as a very, basic research project. So I wanted to raise that point because it is really through that kind of research that we can nurture the students, to have this kind of critical thinking skill sets, and we don't think about what would happen, 10 years later. So I do think that fundamental research is extremely important in the university setting. But I also believe that the mission-oriented research is also important because the technological breakthroughs in a university can really be integrated, or we can accomplish that through partnership with companies, like what you mentioned earlier. So this kind of partnership between academics and also researchers in a company, I think, is critical. I mean, the connection with industry can really help our academics to make the research relevant. And they would be able to realize, well, what are the challenges, what are the needs from the industry perspective. So the two, actually, I do think they can have a symbiotic relationship.
Yep.
I think this is what university must do. We should not be an ivory tower where everything just stay in the lab. We need to reach out and collaborate with industry so that we can actualize our research findings and benefit the society.
Yep. I think that Nancy, you brought up a fantastic example, and that's CRISPR-Cas9. This gene editing function, that it came from somebody studying some microbial. Who cares about, how bacteria defend themselves? Today, we stand here after the fact and we say, oh, fantastic, CRISPR, that is just fantastic. But if you turn the clock back, 20 years, and somebody say, oh, I study, bacterial immune defense system. So what? It's like, who are you? I mean, no self-respecting, academic would be doing that sort of, marginal, peripheral stuff. So, as a society and as a university, do we have the tolerance and the capacity to indulge scientists, to pursue their curiosity-driven, passion-driven research? After all, your university presidents, you have to sign off on promotions. Let's say assistant professor came, 6 years ago. Well, the clock's ticking. What have you done? To come up with CRISPR, it's more than 6 years. And so, and then we, as a society as a whole, because after all the funding of scientific research comes from society, whether it be government coffers, RGC, where does RGC get money from? It's the government, or philanthropy, So whether it be society at large, government, or whether it be the university, do we have the tolerance to indulge in, or allow the scientists to indulge in fundamental curiosity-driven research, that one day, would change medicine, and yet for a long time looks like really weird?
To put it simply, we have to. I really do. Because really basic research is the source of innovation, right? I mean, if we just focus on applied research, just on the, mission-oriented research, I think sooner or later it will dry out. I mean, the pipeline will dry out because the source of innovation lies with fundamental research.
Right.
So we must really do our very best to support those faculty who are passionate about doing that kind of research.
Do you think the funders here in Hong Kong get that? Whether it's be the people who sit on the committees of RGC or the philanthropy, Croucher Foundation, do you think they get it?
Yes.
Huh?
Yes.
Yeah?
I think RGC does support that kind of research.
Yeah?
Really. RGC has all kinds of funding schemes. They have individual grant that supports, blue sky research. They also have collaborative grants that support collaboration to address, specific fundamental question
Yep.
in science. So I do think that funding mechanism exists in Hong Kong. I don't know if Shang agree. I do think so.
Yeah.
And also philanthropic, organization, they also support. Yes.
Thank you, Nancy and Jerry. Of course, our government actually, like any Hong Kong, US, mainland China, they all have a sector of the research funding going to basic and so on. But I think it's a culture of the society. And that reflects into the university in a sense that some of my friends ask me, and this is a little bit tricky question, say, well, why US every 10, 15, 20 years has a major industry emerge? We ask that question. Why there's periodically, we don't see that in this part of the world, in Asia or even Japan. Why is that? That actually has something to do with the education and how we do research and so on. In fact, I think today in Asia, I would say Japan, China combined, Hong Kong included, it's research money-wise, we are okay, we are pretty good. But it's the quality and the creativity inside of that. It matters. It matters. And that actually has to do a lot with our education, all the way to kindergarten, all the way up. So this actually, of course, it takes time and so on. Now, what in our part of the world, I have to be a little bit critical to myself and to, we are very diligent people and we're very hardworking. But society as a whole, and there's a lot of young parents here. Do we allow our children at, kindergarten and so on, free flow and so on? So those are a lot of things to do with culture and so on. Now, of course, that reflect in some of the government policies. Sometimes there is funding comes in with certain KPI, and then, but a lot of time we do have that freedom sector of RGC give a pretty good funding in terms of encourage research and so on. But then, again, does a university, I would say in Hong Kong, and I have been talking to my mainland colleagues that we have actually a little bit better in terms of research mechanisms, evaluation system, and so on. And we don't ask for review every year, every 2 years. That's too frequent. It makes people like factory worker. You have to generate something. That makes a short-term, urge to do something very quick. But now, if you say nothing is perfect, even in US today, there is certain funding that is for short-term. You have to demonstrate and so on. But in general, I think money is one thing, but the culture and so on, we need to have, as Jerry say, well, how much tolerance we have? We have some, but as you know that in university, the professor comes in, a young professor comes in 6 years for tenure, you publish or perish. So that's the life. Now, I can give you one example of my friend back in Berkeley, and who is now president of University of Chicago, very prominent. This year, unfortunately, he missed the Nobel Prize. I think he could have a chance. But he was actually 6 years, zero funding. He didn't get any funding, but he published milestone work. And the university at the time, I think his department of chemistry said, well, this guy seems like there's no hope to get funding. And for 6 years, he demonstrated himself has no way to get funding. But his work is good. Let's, do a gambling, and let's give him a tenure. So he got it, and he was really fantastic later on. Got a lot of funding. So I guess an organization like that, has certain good judgment, like you guys do investment, whether it's a long-term investment or short-term investment. And that is, I think, all the administrators, myself, and we have to keep that in mind that, of course, there's deans, department heads, they have a better judgment and so on. But, in Hong Kong U, as Nancy probably agree, that at the university level, we don't have much money actually for research and so on. We have a little bit to give to professor, but not many. Most of professor apply the funding outside in RGC, Hong Kong government, different channels and so on. But university, last year, we actually created a fund within Hong Kong U, try to create people doing useless stuff. useless stuff. And some of you from Princeton, you probably remember that there is a book by the director, I forgot his name, of the Advanced Institute. He wrote a book of Usefulness of the Uselessness. Okay. And that's how actually a lot of breakthrough science actually, which benefit a lot of things later on. But if you look in a whole society, a country like China or US, nobody want to pursue that, very risky research, and then there's no hope for, you hope 10 years later, 20 years later, there's a major industry emerge. CRISPR is an example. There are many examples I can give you, but that's how collectively, I think a university like our size should have a tolerance. So we actually built this fund called Long-Lasting Impact Fund for support professors who may not actually be able to get funding from a regular channel because they need a certain, sometimes it's a beauty contest, how good you are and what kind of award you got and what kind of great ideas. Where you're from? Oh, you're from Nobel Prize laboratory, graduate from there. Okay, there's a credit there, right? So, but I think we want to actually create a space in Hong Kong U that allowed some scholars who have brilliant idea, but likely to fail. And we want to encourage that. I mean, probably my terms are limited. I won't see anything striking to have a Nobel Prize or something. But we want to create that culture in Hong Kong U that foster that people want to take a risk, want to do huge thing, not a big thing, huge thing. And collectively, if we have 1,000 professors over 10, 20 years, there's somebody will make a big bang. And that's what the university is about. We want to create, and that actually will set a great example for our students. When they graduate, they go to Huawei or some other place, they will say, I'm going to do something different. And I'm going to be revolutionary, okay? And that's how great things happen and how we change the world.
I totally agree. I think the university, must embrace that kind of spirit. So at HKUST, we also have internal funding mechanism. We didn't give it a name. We did not call it useless but
That's what you should call it, the useless.
I'll go back and think about it. Yes, but we do feel that from a university's point of view, we have to be supportive, and we not only provide funding for that kind of research, we also strengthen our research infrastructure, because for basic research, they do need certain infrastructure to support them, because they cannot afford to build that kind of research infrastructure. For example, very expensive equipment in their own lab. So the university supports it by having central research facilities, well-equipped central research facilities, so that colleagues can test out their ideas without too much constraints. So that's what we can offer. But when I look at the funding mechanism in Hong Kong, of course, majority is from the government. Be it RGC, UGC, ITIB, majority is from the government. Now, in the US, I think Gerald is definitely much more familiar than I am, but in terms of basic research, though, a lot also comes from the government. So the industry support applied research, more translational type of research, but the government still, they carry, majority of the load to support basic research, right? And in addition with foundations, etc. So I think in Hong Kong, the funding mechanism for supporting basic research exists. And I believe that in the mainland, with the focus on fundamental research, I do think that the funding mechanism is also quite good. So I think we can really help to nurture this kind of faculty who are so passionate about conducting fundamental research.
Right. So I think you bring out some very important points. Like this gentleman who is now president of University of Chicago. What's his name? Some Greek name, right? Yeah, it's so long. It's a very long name. He was fortunate to be in a place like Berkeley where there were enough brilliant minds around to recognize the potential of what he was doing and allow him that room to, develop his work. But the dominant mode of deciding funding as well as publication is by peer review. And peer review is almost a guarantee to revert to the mean, meaning that average people make sure you become average. So I'm constantly surprised, but by now not surprised, how many Nobel lectures the Nobel recipient would say, when I first did this work, I couldn't get it published. Nobody would publish this. They think this is heresy. So this whole peer review mechanism almost guarantees mediocrity. How do we have an alternative mechanism to recognize the brilliance? Now, incidentally, that is what I do as a venture capitalist. I bet on people who are doing startups. And 10 years later, I'll see there's a scorecard. Has that IPO, or has that company, gone IPO? Has its drug been approved by the FDA? These are very concrete, But I, as a capitalist, I can make rather authoritarian decisions. I say this is good. I'll back him, and I'll back him. But anytime you get into a committee, you are guaranteed to revert to mediocrity. How do we deal with this? Like your useless fund or your useless fund. Who decides? Who gets to decide, how much to give this one? How useless is this versus how useless is that? How do we solve that problem of not reverting to the mean and mediocrity rules?
Very good question, I know. When we close to the dinner, and Gerald's question is getting sharper and sharper. But indeed, it's a very challenging question. Every university leader has to think about, I'm sure Nancy is. I don't have a good example, but let me put it this way. If you want a brilliant person, you need 10,000 or 1,000 excellent person. Because it's layers like a pyramid. You have to build it up. And you cannot just have all mediocres and there's one spikes come out. That usually, so you need to create a culture, create a system that has some measures, publication and so on. So I'm not totally against it. Though I do believe the people has to demonstrate they are very good or excellent, has to have certain publications or track record to demonstrate. But that doesn't guarantee the brilliant, occasionally brilliant people. But that will actually, that culture will give you certain assurance or certainty that, okay, no nonsense will be existing in this university because at least there's a quality of people respect, very good excellence, okay? Now, if you have that culture, you don't have, mediocrity, try to push good people around, or protectionism, all of this would unlikely will exist because people pursue, even with some kind of measure of publication, they pursue excellence. But that is the key. It's a key to the door of the brilliance that you may have one day, sometime will have, allow that happen. But if you don't have that layer, I cannot imagine, but maybe from investing point of view, there is a mechanism. You will make that pops up.
Which is to say, university, to Nancy's point earlier, that really should be more integrated. That may not be the right word, but certainly less demarcated from industry. There's some actually pretty good people in industry. I mean, that they have to survive, you know, doing a startup and with limited fundings, limited, you know, runway, they have to make it work.
Yes.
And so these people have acquired skills or have attributes or have self-selected, you know,
Yeah.
for certain skills that could benefit, you know, people who exist or do their work purely within academia. I'm all for, you know, less or more porosity between academia and then industry. So I believe, I can't confirm this, in some of the promotion committees at MIT, they actually have industry people sitting on those committees.
No, I'm a true believer of partnership between academia and industry. I think that has to happen. And it's not just for the faculty, you know, to learn of the latest challenges and needs from the industry. It's also for the students.
Yep.
I think, you know, the students will have opportunities to, you know, to understand, you know, the relevance of the research, and it's good for their employability too, you know, after they work on the collaborative project. So I think if Hong Kong can have more of that, I think it would be good. So HKUST has formed many joint labs with companies, and I think this is having a positive impact. You know, to bring our research outcome out of the lab to, you know, for the outcome to be actualized and realized. And so, you know, that's a very important shift in the paradigm.
Right.
So I just want to respond to what you said, Gerald, about peer review. I really feel that, you know, for certain areas, it is so difficult to publish in top journals because the reviewers are your competitors. So forget it. You know, you won't get the papers published. And very often for Nobel laureates, their best work, they were actually not published in top journals. You know, Aaron Chekhanova, I mean, his work on protein degradation was not published in top journals. So I think for peer review, you know, when we review our faculty's research output, we really need to keep that in mind. Sometimes we look at imperfecta, but I don't think we should. I think we, you know, like what you said earlier, Sean, we should look at the potential and make bets, you know, on whether the faculty will eventually be successful. And it is our job to do that kind of evaluation.
Yep. Well, this public-private collaboration, I'm a big proponent as well. Now, a common criticism of universities working more closely with industry is that you put at risk academic freedom. Now, I think that whole notion of academic freedom is a bit more fictitious than the purists make it out to be. Going back to economics, Milton Friedman told us that there is no real freedom until there is economic freedom. If you cannot get,
That's why it's a Freeman.
yeah. So you can indulge in the wildest and most brilliant, you know, imagination, scientific imagination, but if you don't get funding, you know, unless you're doing number theory, you know, if you don't get funding, you know, you can't prosecute that brilliant idea. So it really is I think a fictitious straw man that we must, you know, bring down and promote more opportunities that cross between academia and industry. Now, I see the mic coming out, and which is to say, you know, let's reserve the rest of the time for the audience to interact with the president. There's a gentleman here.
So I have three questions for each of you. The first one for you. So we haven't had a very exact definition of the science. Everything can be science. So in your knowledge, the politics is science or not? This is a question for you. The second question for President Nancy. On one hand, the curiosity, the driven research. On the other hand, it's an ethic driven now to research further. As the scientist, how can you get a balance between these two? Okay, the last question for President Zhang. Yeah, in your university, have you ever changed the method of the final examination in the era of the GPT? For me, I have to change it. At the beginning of this semester, I come from Fudan University. I promised my student the method of the final examination, you can write a paper. But it's quite easy, the GPT, to produce the 3,000 words, you know. So I have to break my promise. I go back to the closed book examination. Have you ever changed? If you done, tell me what you have to do. Okay, thank you.
All right, I'll be the first to answer your question. And I answer it by drawing a distinction between political science and politics. One can indeed apply the scientific method to the study of human behavior or social behavior that fall in the realm of politics or government or the practice of, you know, how social organizations. But political science is an abstraction of politics. It is not politics. A political scientist is not equipped, you know, to engage in politics, as is evidenced by the now somewhat disgraced president of my university. She is a political scientist, yeah? Now, would you want her to be a politician? Would you want her to be, you know, a public, you know, elected official? You saw her performance, you know, before the congressional inquiry or committee. That disgraceful performance is the distinction between political science and politics. Her answer of, it all depends on the context. The whole, you know, First Amendment, you know, analysis versus, you know, what public opinion, you know, wants to get the assurance of, that there's a real divergence. That divergence applies not only between political science and politics, it also applies between economics, the study of economics, and the real running of the economy. Much of the financial crisis of 2017 occurred because that divergence was not respected. And people thought, you know, that these models, you know, that the economists come up with truly will, you know, be predictive of how the economy would and the financial markets would follow. So there's a real distinction between the science, the abstraction of the real phenomenon, you know, that one is studying, and then the real world. Now, Si Mui.
I think striking a balance between, you know, the two types of research is certainly not easy in a university setting. It is an ongoing endeavor. But we would, for example, you know, modify the evaluation matrix. So, you know, traditionally it's about, you know, counting papers, etc., right? But for research, you know, that more mission-oriented, then one can look at perhaps, you know, patterns, the kind of societal impact it may have, or perhaps, it can affect or inform, policy decision, etc. So we have broadened the evaluation matrix to sort of reflect that. But I do agree that, balancing the two, is a commitment from the university. So for HKUST, since the establishment, we have been supporting entrepreneurship. We put in, different supportive measures, providing seed funding, integrating, entrepreneurship into the education program, providing mentorship, etc. And also, the partnership with industry, we have invited the industrial leaders to serve on the advisory boards for us so that we can have the engagement. So I think all this is in the DNA of the university since day one. And we will, do our very best to balance the two, because we truly believe that they are both important, and they are, the responsibilities of the university to excel in both. So, very good question. I hope, I have addressed your answer, your question. Yeah. Okay. All right.
You asked a very good question too. I should have a ChatGPT answer that question. But anyhow, I don't have a great answer. But in our university, well, some of you saw everything we do is on the headline. So in the beginning, my VP for teaching and learning actually say, well, no actually use of ChatGPT. That was in early time, and it was on headline. Internationally, we made some, negative impact of Hong Kong is very conservative. But then we need a few months to study this. So we have a working group study this, then we open it up with limited. So right now we have actually a set of measure of what subject, let's say mathematics, even I give you a ChatGPT, you probably cannot do much. But the arts and social science, they may be do something there. So it's very, very, I would say Hong Kong U now has a set of measure. But I would say soon this measure will be invalid because the technology moves so fast. And a few months ago, actually my colleague Hong Bin Cai is here. He remembered in our deans and VPs meeting, I openly say, that was probably in September or October, I said, I'm deeply worried. Actually, the development of AI and so on the one hand, it will be tremendously transform our society and benefit. We have a lot of things we usually do now, they do for us. But at the same time, just for a selfish reason, that our job maybe end in 30 years, teacher's job. Because my son actually told me after coming back to Hong Kong, he said, well, Daddy, I think you're a waste of your money. He attended USC as our chairman too. And he said, oh, I study most of this online. Teachers, some are good, some are lousy. So, and he now has an AI teacher. Anything he asks in mathematics or something, immediately give a little tutorial. So those are things fundamentally invading our campus. But this we have to embrace, whether we like or not. And I mean, this will be interesting topic for after dinner. What the university will be in 30, 40 years. Right. And so that's actually something we, in Hong Kong, we already have a group of people study this, think about it, whether we actually, it's like in a leaking boat, whether we can survive the boat, except, we all become swimmers,
Thank you. Next question. Right there.
Hello, sorry. Yes, thank you so much for this interesting discussion that has been taking place. And to answer as well, maybe the question of Dr. Chen here in terms of how to evaluate or distinguish from the useless to the useful information. I found it quite interesting. I definitely think that what Professor Yip mentioned in terms of critical thinking skill set, in terms of what Professor Xiang mentioned as well, in terms of the layered complexity of different perspectives, be it in the across different industries, interdisciplinary, but as well intergenerational. I do believe that the most important part here is definitely impact evaluation, but understanding where the needs are and where the problems are and what the challenges are. And for this, we do need to collaborate. We do need to speak the same language. And in order to speak the same language, we need to narrow down the gap that is between academia, corporations, organizations, as well different social entrepreneurs, for instance, or even students. And we can learn so much from each other. So just to answer that one, I do believe that shuttleboarding, for instance, where students can learn and teach the like a reverse mentorship approach, basically, would be definitely an approach. But my question to you all is, and that is a bit as well an extent to the AI challenge that is upcoming for the future. Yes and no. Definitely, I mean, I'm sure that in the ChatGPT and all the other devices we can find potentially some researchers, though what we can't find, I think, is the critical thinking skills and all the soft skills. So now that leads to the very important question is, what kind of ethical principles should a researcher implement in order to have a good research, unbiased research, that will actually meet a long-term goal objective of the research itself? Thank you.
I hate to be so relativist, but ethics is somewhat relativistic. Whose ethics? So when you say ethics, you know, among the academics, you know, you have certain practice of, you know, in academic integrity, you know, you don't fabricate data. When you quote others, you put in quotation marks, or you give, you know, citation and all this. But whose ethics? Is it the same ethics, you know, or is that ethics of academic research adequate, you know, for society at large? You know, if we define ethics in a very narrow scope, you know, we may be led to believe, oh, I fulfill, you know, my ethical requirements. But really, you know, in terms of the ethics in a greater context, you know, for society at large, it may be found wanting. So I think this gets to President Zhang Xiang's question. You know, we as a society, we have to have cultural norms. You know, we have to have prevailing, you know, cultural forces, you know, that are not applied by individuals, you know, as a matter of enforcement, but rather by society at large, that this is what we as society value. You know, this is what we as a society celebrate, you know. And so the question is, how do we build, you know, such a culture? I really feel, you know, Hong Kong, you know, when I received the honorary degree from your university, I gave a lecture there called The Culture of Science, right? And I always felt, you know, Hong Kong lacks this culture of science. If we had more of this culture of science, you know, then with it, you know, would come its own ethics and behavioral norms, as well as value systems, you know, that we celebrate and we continue to support, you know, what is good for science. Anyway, that's my attempt to answer your question. Next, here.
Thank you very much for the insightful talk. It
Please,
was-
I think our time's running out, so please ask a question, don't give a lecture.
Sure. So I want to, it was mentioned that the funding, the considerations of the funding sources, it may limit universities to do fundamental research. My specific question is that how much do the university presidents care about the rankings of their universities? Because publications, number of citations matters in terms of ranking, and when it comes to global rankings, we don't have as many international students as, for example, American universities, so we may unintentionally pay more attention to number of publications, and that may make us not pay that much attention to quality. And the publishing companies, which are mainly profit-focused, are kind of, from my point of view, manipulating our education system. What is your idea about that? Thank you.
Presidents.
I think ranking does impact the students' application. So very often, perhaps not the students, but the family, you know, they would really pay attention to the ranking of the universities the students would submit the application to. I think for us as university president, we certainly cannot ignore ranking, but I think we would not change the way we do things for the sake of ranking. And in fact, you know, these ranking agencies, they keep changing their criteria every year. And it's hard to keep up anyway. So I think for us, we just stay true to our vision and mission, and just you know, do our best. But I think for us, we just, you know, take the outcome as it is, and hope for a better outcome next year.
So I add very briefly. I think well said by Professor Yip. My personal view of ranking and all of this is, yes, if you ask parents, students, government officers, they probably care. Now, what deep in our mind, our heart, is that we believe ranking is a byproduct. It's actually, if you are doing well in a very foundational way, the ranking will automatically come with it. You're not Chinese, but in Chinese, actually, we're saying that when you have a martial arts, you build a 内功, very strong. Then you will have a very good, you know, sort of how you fight and so on. But if this internal force is not very strong, then you cannot, you know, really. So if you're really only pay outside, you know, appearance and so on, that's not good. But if your inside is good, then, you know, it will gradually. So one of the mainland university I visit, a friend of mine is a president there. He asked me, you know, how you really look at ranking and so on. And I think that I give him a very simple answer. One is your undergrad student. In last 30 years, 50 years, let's take longer term. 50 years, what kind of people you create or produced? You know, is there a famous novelist, or you know, somebody really impact the industry? And you know, those are the names you try to say, well, in the last 50 years, my graduate did this, did that, did this. Your graduate, your PhD, very simple. You see how your PhD doctors graduated, where they go. If you are first-class university, your actually PhD should go to first-class university as a professor. That's as simple as that.
Well, I am afraid our time is up. I know there are many other questions, but I do want to be respectful of everybody's time. If I'm 1 minute late, there are 200 people here. I've wasted 200 minutes. So I try to be punctual and apologize for those that have questions that can't be addressed, and want to thank Nancy and Xiang for being with us today and sharing your thoughts. Thank you. And for your leadership, here in Hong Kong, continue, your good work. Hong Kong needs great universities, and your leadership is much needed. So thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Great to have two presidents here and my brother Gerald. Let me just make two comments. Number one, the world is not perfect, and so no system is perfect. And many times by seeking perfection, the marginal utility goes down. In fact, it can turn negative. And I think every society will do well to understand that. To improve is good, but there's up to a certain point, if you want to go beyond, then it's really become very negative to society. So I think that I hope that sensibility will prevail in society. That's number one. Number two, I am truly of the opinion that Hong Kong has wonderful universities. They may not be the best in the world yet, but I think that one of the biggest strengths to Hong Kong's economy is really the 8 universities that we have. And I think we have two excellent leaders here. I know both of them. I appreciate all of them. Again, no one is perfect, not even Nancy or Zhang Xiang, but I think they are overall excellent presidents for Hong Kong, and I trust that they will continue to do their job. And I think that, we all know what happened this morning. A university president just resigned in Hong Kong. I don't want to comment on that, but suffice to say that I think that whatever we do have today in Hong Kong is something that we should value and we should strengthen them. So for those of you who are not academicians, I'm sure that some donations to universities, at least by these two presidents, will be very much appreciated. If not otherwise, at least morally support them. I think it is important to them.
Especially donate to the useless fund. So earmark it for professors, with blue sky, ideas.
And finally, putting on my hat, not as the chairman of Hang Lung, but as chair of the Asia Society Hong Kong Center. If you're not a member, join as a member. And we now have a private dinner for President Circle members of the Asia Society. We're going to go upstairs for a drink, not all of you, but you know who you are. And then also followed by dinner, where we can have a lot more in-depth discussion with the 3 ladies and gentlemen on stage today. We'll have a lot more time. Moreover, before we end tonight, the last 15-20 minutes will be dedicated to the curator, the art curator of our exhibition right now, which is by Master Pang Jun, who has some wonderful, wonderful art in our gallery. So any of you want to see, I suggest, Alice, you can, I don't know if we can let them in today. If not today, tomorrow, come back. It is free. Come and enjoy the beautiful art. And the exhibition curator will address us by telling us what we are looking. So is that wonderful? Isn't Hong Kong wonderful? We can have a discussion on science. We're going to discuss on research. Then they end the evening with a discussion on the arts, such as Hong Kong. Thank you for joining us.